The Turkey-Syria earthquakes. A seismologist explains what has happened. This is on The Conversation by Jenny Jenkins, Assistant Professor, Department of Earth Science, Durham University. The extremely large earthquake that occurred southeast of Turkey, near the border with Syria. Data from seismometers which measured shaking of the ground caused by the earthquake waves suggest this event in the early morning February 6 was magnitude 7.8 on the moment magnitude scale. Seismic waves were picked up by sensors around the world, and you can watch them ripple through Europe, including places as far away as the UK. And then about 9 hours later, the second very large earthquake north of that was 7.5 magnitude, also occurred in central Turkey around lunchtime. Now, why this happened here? This area of Turkey is prone to earthquakes as it lies in the intersection of three of the tectonic plates that make up the Earth's crust: the Anatolian, the Arabian, and the African plates. Arabia is moving northwards into Europe, causing the Anatolia plate, which Turkey sits on, to be pushed out westwards. And if you look at the map, the East Anatolia Fault is basically where all these earthquakes have taken place, over 150 of them. The movement of the tectonic plates builds up pressure on fault zones at their boundaries. It's the sudden release of this pressure that causes earthquakes and ground shaking. This latest earthquake is likely to have happened on one of the major faults that marks the boundaries between the Anatolian and Arabian plates. That marks the boundaries there. Either the East Anatolian Fault or the Dead Sea Transform Fault. That's the Transjordanian fault line that runs through Israel. It goes from the Red Sea, through the Dead Sea, through the Sea of Galilee, the River Jordan. Of course, the River Jordan, all rivers are faults. The River Jordan flows through there, and it goes all the way up into where the tip of it is, where the earthquake took place, the 7.8. So the latest earthquake is likely to have happened on one of these major faults. These are both strike-slip faults, which means they accommodate some motion of plates moving past each other. Significantly bigger than previous earthquakes. While this area has many earthquakes every year caused by the ongoing motion of the tectonic plates, these earthquakes, today's earthquake in particular, is large, devastating, as so much energy was released. The U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, states that only 3 earthquakes bigger than magnitude 6 have happened within 250 kilometers of this location since 1970. At magnitude 7.8, the February 6 event is significantly bigger than ones the area has experienced before, releasing more than twice as much energy as the largest previously recorded quake in the region of magnitude 7.4. Modern seismologists use the momentum magnitude scale, which represents the amount of energy released by an earthquake. The Richter scale is outdated, though is sometimes wrongly quoted in the news. This scale is nonlinear, which represents 32 times more energy released. That means the magnitude 7.8 actually released around 16,000 times more energy than the more moderate magnitude 5 earthquakes that usually happen in the region. 16,000 times. Now, from what I remember from past articles, my comment here is that this earthquake lasted about 90 seconds, which is a very long time. Now, when we tend to think of earthquake energy as coming from a single location or epicenter, but they are actually caused by movement along an area of a fault. The bigger the earthquake, the larger the fault area that will have moved. For something as large as this magnitude 7.8, there is likely to have been movement over an area roughly 190 kilometers long and 25 kilometers wide. This means the shaking would be felt over a very large area. Severe to violent shaking, enough to cause significant property damage in the surrounding areas, up to 80 kilometers away northeastward along the tectonic plate boundary. Light shaking was felt as far away as Turkey's largest city, Istanbul, around 815 kilometers away. It was as well as Baghdad in Iraq, 800 kilometers away, and Cairo in Egypt, 950 kilometers away. What about aftershocks? After major earthquakes, there will be many smaller earthquakes, known as aftershocks, as the crust readjusts to the changes in the stress. These can continue for days to years after the initial event. In the first 12 hours after the initial tremor in southeast Turkey, there were already 3 other earthquakes above magnitude 6. The first was 6.7, which happened only 11 minutes after the first shock, and there have been hundreds of smaller magnitude aftershocks. The second magnitude 7.5 earthquake occurred further to the north on a different but adjacent fault system, the Surgu fault. Technically, this one was powerful enough to count as a separate earthquake in its own right, though it's likely to have been triggered by the first earthquake and will generate its own series of aftershocks. While aftershocks are usually significantly smaller than the main shock, they can have equally devastating consequences, further damaging infrastructure that was damaged by the first earthquake and hampered rescue efforts. After the aftermath of these earthquakes continue to be felt by the people living in this region, we can only hope that international aid gets there as soon as possible in ongoing rescue efforts amid the ongoing aftershocks. And this is by Jenny Jenkins, Assistant Professor, Department of Earth Science, Durham University, on the conversation. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box.